When we first started Product Coffee back in late August, early September 2019, it was a virtual coffee meetup, and we got together and we talked about pretty much small topics, table topics, types of concepts, and asked a few questions and got people's thoughts on things. And I've been collecting over the course of this last quarter, for those of you who haven't noticed, I've been collecting questions almost every week. I've asked you something when you sign up for Product Coffee. I've asked you, what's an important book that you've read that you would recommend to product managers? Or what's a question that's on your mind? I've been collecting those, and those are feeding, along with the ideas portal that we talk about all the time. Those things together are feeding some of the content that we're planning for 2021. Which is almost here. What we're going to do for the rest of the session today is we're going to go back and we're going to just continue the roundtable discussions. And I'm going to continue to, if you've got your camera on, I will try to call on people who I haven't called on in a while. If you specifically have a question that you want to ask and get some group input from today, if you would use the buttons in your participant and chat panel to raise your hand, raise your virtual hand. I'll try to get to you sooner rather than later. And then we'll just open up some discussions about the questions that you bring to the table. But when you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, who you're with, what you're doing right now, and what either a big product management question that you've got on your mind is right now, or an observation to someone else's question, or a topic that you'd really like us to consider discussing in the future. With that said, I'm going to close my mouth up and switch over to introductions and Q&A. And I am going to welcome, let's see, who haven't we heard from in a while? Let's see, Amy Sharma's here. Amy, welcome back. You want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Wow, that was a great introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Sharma. Currently, I'm Vice President of Science for Georgia. So it's not really a product manager. I know, go science.
Go science.
We all need some science in our lives. So that's what I've been doing right now. It's great to be here again. I wish I had a question, but really I'm just here to listen to what everyone has to say. The big thing on my mind right now is figuring out how to understand social media better, which is not a product management question, but that's what I've been thinking about for the past month. It's really great to see everyone.
Great to see you. Welcome back. Amy's been volunteering and helping out with ProductCamp for a few years. Always welcome to have the smarter people in the room. A couple of the questions that have been asked, just for those who joined more recently in the last few minutes, one of the questions that was asked earlier by Ray was, when you're joining a new organization or taking on a new product, how do you tackle getting your head around that new product and taking on that new product initiative, that new product responsibility? That was a really interesting question, I thought. Another question that came up was, in this world, especially right now, as people are a lot of companies are tightening their belts because they've had some soft sales this year due to the COVID crisis. What is the value of a product team? What's the value of a product management team? I thought that was a really good open-ended question. And then another one that I captured here that Jay was talking about just a moment ago was, how important is that technical background to product management? That's actually a pretty popular question on our ideas forum as well. So if you don't have another question, if you want to sound off on one of those topics, how important is it to be a non-technical versus a technical, or a technical versus a non-technical product manager in today's world? So I'm going to switch over and say hello to Charlie Smiley. Charlie, good morning.
Hey, Jason. Good morning, man. How you doing?
Welcome back. I love your background, man.
Thank you, brother. You know, it's not my house because I've got kids. It would never look.
That's okay.
It would never look that good. So, hey, yeah, Charlie Smiley, guys. I've been coming here for a few months now. So, Jason, I just wanted to say thank you too. I've been thinking about everything you've been doing here, and just over the past few months, just coming to this has been very. I actually look forward to it. There are sessions that you go to because you have to go to, maybe, but this is actually a very fun and interactive environment. So I appreciate all the work you're doing, and thanks a lot for it. So
thank you. It truly is my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. So I don't have any, I was just thinking about questions you had or some things you said. Some of the things I was just thinking, if we throw it out there, is interacting with your engineering team, which is always, if there are any engineers on the call, please close your ears now. But, and I was a developer in the 90s and a bad one. So this is why I got into product management. But I had a little bit of a technical background, which I felt was a plus coming into product management. To your question about technical versus non-technical, it helped me relate to the engineers. It helped me, obviously, engineering and development over the past 20 years has changed a lot. And so I'm not as in touch with how that works now. But having that background gave me some like street cred, if you will, with the developers, I think, for me personally, early on. So I think it's not required, but I think the best thing to do if you don't have any kind of technical background is to try to understand it as best you can. Throw yourself into it. You don't have to be an expert on it, but you have to the generalities of what the platform is, what they're developing in, how they do their development processes, things like that. Just learn it. I'm not saying go and start coding, but just take an interest in what they're doing. And I think that will help a lot with the relationship as well. That being said, that was my input of that question. I wanted to see if anybody had any experiences with engaging engineering teams that have been challenging and how they've overcome those.
So I think like one interesting dynamic in that is when it's an outsourced engineering team, like it adds like a little bit more of a wrinkle, right? Because you're dealing with a different culture and a different technical language.
Yeah.
So I think one thing that helps is just to normalize it to the fact that we all either have families or we all have hobbies, and just trying to find like those personal things that help you engage on, even if it's just chatting for a minute or two about their favorite hobby or basketball or something. That can help to break down those walls so that when you do get to technical hurdles, engineering hurdles, that you have some currency basically to draw on.
That's a good point.
Great point, Damon. I was trying to get a mail platform feature, and the development team was in Tampa, so I bought a block of tickets to the Tampa Bay Rays game. And we all went one evening and hung out at the Rays game, and that helped.
Yeah, I think
Just making that human connection.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is, you're right, Damon, and Jay, that's nice when you've got them in-house, and Damon, having them outsourced. Yeah, you mentioned cultural and language, and it's also time-wise too. My last job with Verizon, we had a team in Bangalore, and just the time element alone was just very difficult to deal with. So to have an in-house development team, Jay, is awesome. My current situation, I work for a smaller company, we're about 60, 70 people, and our development team is all remote. And obviously our company is going all remote. We had an office in Cumberland. We've got a small office in Kennesaw that we can go if we need to go meet, that kind of thing, but we're not going into the office anymore. We're all remote. And so my development team is all remote. And in these times, even if it's domestically, it can be still challenging because engineers traditionally want to do engineering stuff. They don't want to meet. And so that's and I don't mean to, I'm not trying to stereotype them, but it's funny when you product managers, they have their stereotypes of us. You want this and you won't tell me what you want. And I get that, and I respect that. It's just fun trying to get over those hurdles and be able to work efficiently with them, especially in these trying times, if you will, where everybody is remote. And I like your idea, but we actually had a retro, like a 2020 retro yesterday, and when that came up about having a team building, and we were all sarcastically joking with each other, like paintball and axe throwing, and as long as the axes were toward the wall and not toward each other. So it is a challenge, and I'm sure we've all dealt with it. So
I think we have to invent new ideas in this new times. I just finished a sunset. I was wondering, how am I going to celebrate it with all my colleagues in the dev team? I thought of an idea. I actually stole this idea from some funny ads. So they all are in Dallas, Texas. I'm always work from home from Atlanta, managing them. Usually I fly down there, and then we will have a big dinner or something like that. And then they celebrate that way. So my boss said, I was asking my boss for a budget. She said, what do you want to do with them? How are you going? I don't want to mail each and everybody some trinkets. We always do that. What else we can do? So I was thinking about it. Actually, last night I saw an ad. I thought it was very funny. It's about a dating app. I don't know why I was watching it. I'm married with kids, so I don't need that. Sure. But the idea intrigued me. I'm thinking of sending them all an Uber Eats card, and then I'm going to have a virtual dinner with my team. They're all going to dress up. sit in front of the laptop and we are all going to have a virtual dinner. I
Very
said,
nice,
hey,
Maya.
this is the
Yeah.
best I can do at this time.
Yep.
Probably
That's
send
good.
them a thank you card or something like that. So I think we have to get ideas from other things, like inspiration from other areas. So this is what I'm thinking for my celebration of sunset.
Great idea.
Yeah, so I've been having the same issue. I found this summer I emailed everyone brownies. There's tons of mail order companies now. And so we had a big celebration for all our interns at the end with brownies. And I thought that was a really big deal. It gets awkward because you're asking everyone for their home address, which is a thing that normally I would like to never know about the people I work with. And the other things that I've gone back to handwritten thank you notes now that I have the end. So if you're, so both those things, thank you. Oh, so that has been really, because you get mail, right? And it's nice. And it's not, now that the election season's almost over, it'll be nice to also open the mailbox again. Because I don't know about you guys, but especially in Georgia, I am sick of opening the mailbox right now. But it is nice to have mail that is someone wrote you a big card. And it's always a surprise to them. And then going back to the engineers on the technical thing, I found that whenever they're trying to tell me that it was impossible, I always have them walk me through why it's impossible. And granted, that's a lot harder to do over Zoom than it was on a whiteboard. But the instant I'm just like, okay, we need to get to X, tell me why we can't get there. It's fun because then as soon as they start telling you all the reasons that it can't be done, then they start thinking of all the ways that it could be done. And then I'm not just saying, hey, just build me a mail server. That's not hard, right? Like you're like, okay, I get it. It's impossible. Why is it impossible? And then, although sometimes it is impossible because they're like, here, this is where we haven't invented quantum computing yet. And you're like, oh, okay, let's back that up. But like most of the time, if they walk you through the impossible, they get to the possible pretty easily. So
one of the things I remember on that theme, and yeah, I'm sure you know this story. Jessica's not here today. I'm certain she does, although I saw Kurt roll in. Kurt's here, so you've heard this one. Back when JFK challenged the country to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, there were a lot of naysayers out there, and he actually formed the Skeptics and Critics Committee. I can't remember exactly, but it was like the Skeptics and Critics. And what it was is their job was to line out all the reasons we could not put a man on the moon by the end of the decade and then go solve them. And that was one of the keys to actually successful pursuit on that. So it's very similar to your thought there of tell me all the reasons it won't work, why we can't do it. And it starts opening up the thinking pathways. It's very cool. Very cool. I have a question here from Jerry. Jerry, do you want to jump on camera or do you want me to just ask it for you?
There I am.
All right. Hey, Jerry, good morning.
Good morning. I spend a lot of time in the customer experience world, and obviously there are product managers in all the organizations I work with, but this group has a different perspective. You are product managers, and you probably have customer experience leadership and teams in your organization. So I'd love to get the aggregate perspectives and wisdom of this community in how do you relate to the customer experience groups in your organizations? Is there overlap? You have common cause? Are you rivals? How does it go for you out there in the real world as product managers?
I'm curious, as part of your question, Jerry, how many in here, and you can just do a show of hands using the reactions in the application, how many of you actually work in an organization that has a formal customer experience team?
Yikes.
Let's see, one hand, fairly small. There's another one coming in there. So there's a couple, and I saw Soumya raise her hand. So a small number. It's a topic that's come up on the Ideas Forum as well. And I talked with Lisa as well about doing a session about that earlier next year about the whole evolution of customer experience. And so we're looking into that. But go for it. Who wants to take that?
I can go. I can give something how I view it in our organization. We have a very formal client success team. We work with hospitals, large hospitals. So every time a client comes on board, the client success team is responsible for maintaining their paperwork, as we call it, and then the relationship with the clients, because I cannot go talk to 85 plus hospital folks. So we do have a very strong, number one, they are not rivals. I don't even want to use that term. Every team we see as product manager is our internal stakeholder internally. So when we build something, we keep them updated in everything we build. We make sure that they have a say in what we build, because they are the first ones who talk to clients. They know a lot more factors about what the clients want. So they are a big part in the way I prioritize things. I do a monthly call with them called a client satisfaction call. They represent the client. So they are my first level stakeholder, internal stakeholder. So after every iteration, we build a product. They're all invited to attend the iteration demos, any concerns, questions. So we take their input very predominantly. And also when we have very specific cases that's coming in from a client, I do go to that particular client success person and say, okay, hey, we are seeing this issue. I have a couple of ideas. I want to pitch it into you. You know the issue more closely than I do. So we pitch in ideas back and forth. So that's how I deal with them. They are an extension of our team. That's how I see all my team, different teams there, like implementation or client success or sales, whoever it is. So it's a very, on a day-to-day basis, I talk to them. It's not, I don't see them as, oh, okay, we can talk to them once a month because I do a call, nothing like that. Just ping them on the teams and then say, hey, I have a question on that case, and then we'll go from there. If I should say, of all the teams that I have worked with in product management, client success is probably the second closest I work with after the development team.
Thanks.
Damon, you want to add to that or have a different perspective?
Just thinking about what we do at Turner. I mean, we've gone through some transition just with like how the product line is managed, but at least when the product line was in its state last season, we had good synergy between product ops and I guess what we would call, I mean, it was still like a customer support function. There was a good kind of like data thread that ran through that where our customer service side had a good idea of just what was trending on customer support issues. And since that was typically aligned with someone on the product ops side, then typically weekly you were hearing something about like an issue that was bubbling up in the product from the customer side. And so it just, I'd say probably the main thing is it goes back to data. Like you're only going to be effective with what you're tracking. And that's especially true on the customers. Though it's valuable to gather qualitative feedback, you really need to know just what issues are consistently bubbling up for your customers.
Very cool. Let's see, what I want to do is I want to break everybody off and do some smaller groups. I wanted to see if there's anybody else who hasn't said hello this morning. Jeff had to jump off. Let me say, Donna Orban, you want to jump on and say hello and see if there's a question that you want to throw out there for the small group discussions as well?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Donna Orban. I currently work more, not so much in product management anymore, but more solution design, more upfront with our sales team, which leads into, so I work very closely with our product managers, and because what I do then feeds into more our product now because I'm upfront in the sales team and things. So one of the questions I have is now more, I am actually doing a lot of what I would call product marketing because I have to create all the sales decks and sales slickies and things like that to sell the products because while we do have a marketing team, it's not focused in that direction, and often we are pretty thin, and the turnaround time and sometimes requests that we get from the executives is literally, hey, I got a presentation tomorrow at such and such client. I need the deck now. What do you have? So that's my question. How can product, because obviously the product is always changing. And a lot of times I go to our product team and ask for, hey, can you quickly create me a demo of this branded with this customer and things like this? And a lot of times they come back and it's like, yeah, in 3 days. I'm like, no, I need it tomorrow. And we are going back and forth. So how, as product, how do you work really well and support the product marketing of the product as your product is changing? because I'm on that side asking them and doing that. And usually, especially now in this online time, they expect miracles to happen in creating this marketing.
All right, cool. That's a good one. So I'm going to break us off into some small groups using breakout rooms. You'll see an invitation to join a breakout room in just a moment. There's about 20 of us, so I'm going to put us in groups of about 4. And I've updated the product coffee notes screen document, and I pasted the link into chat as well to capture some of the questions that I was able to write down during our discussion today. So you can take that with you. Get to know each other a little bit, pick a question, talk about it. We'll come back at about 10 till 9 and get your thoughts on the questions that you discussed as a team. So I'm going to break you up right now and enjoy the discussion.
Jason, that breakout room, like that timeline, that's an effective way to end a meeting.
Yeah, sorry, 60 seconds, you're done.
You're done, man. So yeah, that's
I'm sorry, I
try that at work.
yeah, really. We're just going to breakout rooms. There's only 4 of us, but we're going to all go into a breakout room anyway, and I will shut it down.
Ultimate time boxing, right?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Hey, I'm sorry about that, folks. I got in a discussion in the room that I was in and wasn't paying attention to the clock, and I normally set an alarm for these things, so my bad. But I want to spin over here real quickly in the few minutes that we have and look at room 1, which was Amy, Donna, Jay, and Kurt. If you would please, are you back? Yeah, you're back in here. What did you guys talk about? Any insights you want to share with the group?
All right, guys. Oh, Jay, you're muted.
I heard a recurring theme of the size of a company affects some of these things. It's easier for some because of larger companies with lots of resources. I know we talked about that.
Agreed.
Smaller is hard. You got to wear a lot of hats. You don't get all the resources you need. You get asked to do something with a 24-hour notice. Otherwise, you're holding up a sale.
Right.
Yeah, all that stuff happens in the smaller companies, so it's a challenge.
And
Hats.
Kurt was kind enough to address the question I had about technical versus being non-technical, working in a technical environment. And thanks, Jason, for putting me in a room with 3 other technical people.
We did make fun of engineers for him just so he could
Right.
feel the love.
There's always somebody else, right?
Hey, it's got to grow, expand your horizons.
Yeah.
Let's see, how about room 2? That was me, Matt, Nandita, and Ray. I'm not going to talk. I talk enough.
A couple things we talked
Yes.
about was being willing to set boundaries. We were talking about how to approach new markets and things like that. And so being willing to identify between tactical and strategic and give yourself time was one topic of discussion. Then Nandita, anything?
Yeah, you covered it. Yeah, the first thing we talked about was like if you're handling a new product or entering a new organization, how do you deal with that? And the main thing that we agreed on is like immediately you can jump into the tactical stuff, but the strategic part will take time as you learn and find out what more about how the organization and the product is working over there. And then the other thing we talked about was how do we get market insights? What are the different ways that you could get market insights?
Okay. Cool. Thank you. How about room 3, which had Ann, Charlie, Damon, and Jerry?
All right, want to take it?
Just
I
a
think we
quick,
Go ahead, Dan.
it's like a quick add-on to, I think, this technical versus non-technical question. We were talking about, is that maybe a question of your product team is growing and you don't realize it yet? It's what is the organization asking that they don't realize that they're asking? So if they're asking you to do other functions that spread the PM role really thin, they might be essentially asking, oh, I might need a PO, I might need a product ops function. So it's kind of like a slightly different bent on that. Is if they're really looking for technical versus non-technical, probably some good questions to ask back is, are we maybe talking about this team expanding?
I think one of the things we also like, it really depends on, the problem with our role is that it's not, it's very broad and not define. PMs, project managers have PMI to go and say, hey, this is the process you follow. Product managers have all kinds of methodologies they can follow. And I had mentioned when I interviewed a couple of years ago for a company, he said, as for a product management role, are you hands-on? Are you ivory tower kind of thing? And that's the approach. I think it depends on the company. Are you going to be a full end-to-end product manager? And some eyes are soup to nuts, and you're going to be in there in the scrum meetings and working with engineering day and day and testing and defining recs. And then at the same time, you're going to go out and look in the market, and eventually you can't do all that. And it just depends on that. So a lot of that comes down to the organization, large organization, like Damon said, versus a small organization. We did talk, one thing also I thought was interesting, and was how the difference between new product development and what I call KTLO, because I don't want to call it maintenance or operations, and how this goes along with those product management roles. Are you focused on new product development outside of your core business, or are you focused on core business and KTLO and maintenance, and how you can make, how to word this, the core product? Just because you're working on core product doesn't mean you're not innovating. I think was Ann brought up as well, that you can there's still enhancements you can do, but sometimes people in the organization consider new product development, and I keep using the word sexy, more that's what they want to gravitate toward. Those are the shiny objects, as opposed to because the core raw product is too boring or it's just what it is. But there's room for enhancements in some of the core product offering depending on where it's at in this life cycle.
And lastly, real quickly, group 4, Craig, Joyce, Preston, and Soumya.
This is Joyce. Soumya voted me to be the spokesperson. And Craig was very great about telling us about doing a walkabout in order to get to know people in the organization. And he had an innovative method of going to the newest person and taking them around to introduce them to everyone so that he could also meet them. That I went out on the internet to look up East Indian etiquette, and then Soumya gave us a lot more tips along that line, which is there are people who it's their culture to never say no. So you have to ask them, when will something be done? How will it be done? Because if you ask them yes, no, you will always get yes. So those are the highlights.
A good highlight.
Me, I just say no. Product manager. All I say is no all day long.
I had one more thing I wanted to add that I think Jerry had a very valuable question, but he brought it up in the last 60 seconds, and it could be a whole product coffee session. I thought he should probably share it with this group, because I think you'd probably get a good response.
Oh, sure. I was just asking, in this constant ongoing discussion about product management philosophy and structure, what is the role of the voice of the customer? Does that conversation, is it ever informed by what structure and philosophy would best serve your natural customer base?
And he asked that with the last 60 seconds
primarily
left.
For internal stakeholders.
That is a really good question, and you're right. That's a whole that is a whole session. I think the voice of the customer is the central drive priority of a good product manager. That's why you exist, and aggregating that is what's hard. This is Jason's personal opinion. We look at the spectrum of customers. There's the customer you have today, and there's the customer you want tomorrow. Are they the same? Is there a continuum? And understanding the voice of the customer of today and the customer of tomorrow, and aggregating that, bringing that in to build a successful business is a huge part of that. It's a huge part of that series of trade-offs that you have to do as you're representing the voice of the customer.
Yeah, just anecdotally, I've worked with a number of folks in your discipline and also in CX, and more than once got customer feedback after a reorganization. Basically, why did you do that? Your product organization was ideal for our needs, and it seemed like you just threw it in a pot, threw it up against the wall and changed it. So now we have to meet new people, we have to learn new processes, and yet from our point of view, it was working just fine. Yeah, so that could be a fun session sometime.
Yeah, I think it would be. And there's a similar session out there on the ideas forum, but it's a little bit different. But so it might be worth adding to the ideas portal as well. And I'm going to add some of these as well and start reaching out to people over the next couple of weeks. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming. It's been a great Q4, a calendar Q4 here with Product Coffee. Thanks for joining and making this a success. Thanks for the discussion today. It's been a lot of fun. I'm thankful to have all of you in my circle. And I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season, no matter what holidays you celebrate. and we'll see you in the new year. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye.